welcome to the Unitarian Church of Worcester. If you don't know much about our faith, I belong here, so does my wife, Deb. Deb, can you say hi?
Hi.
Are there any other members of the church that are here? So maybe we could go around and introduce each other, like this gang right here. So I should start. Craig Van Battenberg. I live at 40 Boyd Street, which is over the top of the hill where Strands is.
Hello, I'm Chris Michelotti. I am a curator and event promoter here in the city. I do at least two art shows every month in the city outside of concerts and a farmer's artisan market starting up in July, and yeah.
And where will that farmer's market be?
That's going to be, it's the Worcester Bazaar. It's on Grove Street. So if you know where the Fix is, it's going to be in that little cobblestone area in the back out there.
Hi, my name's Arthur Resker. I'm with Mass DOT. I'm the assistant maintenance engineer. My crew's the guys that cut the grass and plow the snow.
And scrub off the graffiti, right?
Yes, and remove the graffiti.
Hi, I'm Joe Johnson. I live just up the street. I'm an old retired UPS guy, and if it has anything to do with the city's forest or gardens or something like that, and people have an opportunity to volunteer, then I get busy there. That's what I do.
I'm Joanne Johnson. I'm Joe's wife, and I still do some part-time social work, even though I'm retired, working with special needs families. And I was with Joe, one of the people that donated the turquoise table that is actually in the community gardens, and that's one of the reasons.
I'm assuming this is young males. I could be wrong. I'm just assuming that if you live in the neighborhood and your family's split up and has trouble, or poor, or anything where it's tough to be a kid, this is the result. I'm making this up. I think it's true for me. And so, and I agree with you. I didn't see the post. I'm not a Facebook person. But as the board was having these conversations, I was lining up with your school of thought. I didn't know who you were, Deb. That if we can find these kids and then work with them and find a place for them to have their mural, that was my first thought, I think that would be the best route to go. Because most likely, they're just pissed off at something. And this is how they're acting out. And I would probably do the same thing. I won't tell you what I did when I was 10, but I didn't get arrested. And then my parole officer friend over here, thank God I've never had a parole officer. I should have, but I never got caught. And I think that how do we do that? How do we help this man that works for the city, thank you, not have to run up with graffiti all the time, because it never ends, right? It just keeps going. I don't have an answer. I would like, we have a men's group here at this church, so if I had something to offer, is this time to offer it now or later?
No, because we have to have Chris.
Okay, so I'll just say that much, and my offers will be later.
Yeah, we'll do that. So let me introduce Chris. So Chris is an artist. I'd like you to be able to put all these thoughts together and move us in the direction where we can start building community out of what happened.
Sure.
From your perspective as an artist.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say thank everyone for sharing your guys' stories, your thoughts. I think it's really important. As the gentleman that just left would put it, as a punk kid who has grown up, first and foremost, I think one of the things that needs to be talked about is sometimes art is made because people are angry at the world. Sometimes art is made because people love the world. Art is an expression. Art is how people can express an idea when they don't necessarily have the words to do it, because we're talking about visual art right now. The same thing can be said with music. The same thing can be said with dance. It runs, it's everywhere. This is how people can express ideas and thoughts, dreams, hopes, anger. These are voices within your community. And that needs to be at the forefront of everybody's opinion, as everybody's idea. As we talk about these things, these are voices from, generally speaking, the voiceless. But more than anything, it's just people, these are voices from your community. When we are talking about the turquoise table, I used to live over in the Seattle area. I've seen plenty of these tables. So when we're talking about the turquoise table, I was talking about it with another friend of mine who does graffiti, and he made a very good point by saying, if you're just going to throw a table out into the open, you're giving artists a canvas. That's it. And so generally speaking, if you were to have paint on it, he even threw out this idea of like little flowers on the side or something to mark it where it's not just a turquoise table, a plaque letting people know this is something, like this is dedicated to your son, which again, I'm really sorry to hear that happened. But like this table's here for our son, and here's the meaning behind this table. If you let these people know that there is a story happening with this table, more often than not, people are going to be less likely to put things onto it because they understand there is a deeper story being told. It's important when you're talking about your story about the garden that just erupted out of nowhere. I think it's also important that we talk about how sometimes sporadic, miraculous things happen, and community, the power of community can be seen when no one planned on this. And, when we talk about the turquoise table, this was a woman who realized she didn't have a community, and she didn't plan on this becoming a movement, but it became one. And so when movements start to become organized, that's when it requires all the more reason to continue telling that story. So the kids, so the teenagers, so the adults who are leaving graffiti behind, because it's not just I appreciate what you were saying, and it's not just a kid thing. Like I know people who have kids who do graffiti. Like these are family, generally men, but these are family men, and I know young women who are getting into it. Like this is an ever evolving thing. So like when you have a movement that is now becoming organized in thought, and people are agreeing on, well, this is the story that we want to tell. Continue to tell that story so that people aren't surprised. When I'm listening to everybody's thoughts, again, I do apologize to the city because, I get it. Like, it does get expensive, I'm sure, and that's a much larger discussion. But as far as the community aspect goes, when you guys are talking about doing murals, something that I noticed, because being a curator, like as my main part of my profession, I'm kind of the in-between a lot of people who do graffiti and street art, and people who do murals, people who paint on canvases, and I'm the person that's trying to figure out how can I bring this into spaces so that more people can see this amazing stuff. I see art everywhere. I don't just think art needs to be something within a museum. That is a core belief of mine. So when we're talking about community and murals, I don't know if you guys have heard this term, there's this term called hostile architecture. And hostile architecture is basically this notion that if we are going to, say, stop homelessness, which when I lived in Seattle, I worked with the houseless populations. You'd put that little question, like something you wouldn't know about me, like just by looking at me in that text. I actually was a pastor at one point. So like I've had that as one of my titles in my life. And so hostile architecture is basically, if you see a bench that's long enough for somebody to sleep on, what some urban developers will do is they'll say, I don't like the fact that somebody can sleep on this bench, so I'm going to put I'm going to put like a little bar right down the middle. We'll call it seats. But really what they're trying to do is make it uncomfortable for people to sleep there. And so earlier, we were talking, I can't remember your name.
Oh, Steve.
Steve, thank you. We were talking about skateboarders and skateboarding. And there was, let's say in the 90s and the early 2000s, a lot of towns and a lot of communities all over, they were complaining about these skateboarders. How do we stop these skateboarders? Well, a lot of times you go through that, you go through the common circle, you know, more authoritarian thinking, get more cops out there, build up more ways to catch them in the act, and then take everything away from them. And much like when you look at like the drug war and you look at other types of things, anytime you put a war on anything, it's going to be a loss for you. But when you look at all these fixes, there is maybe some initial fixing, but eventually you look around and what you really caused was damage to various community members and to kids. You know, like my artist who actually sent me an apology text, he ran into car issues, got off late from work and car issues, it sucks. But because, again, sorry, side note, a lot of these artists are people who are serving you meals. They're people who are working hourly jobs. They're people that you go to the grocery store next to. They're, you know, you can't just look out into a crowd and be like, that's a graffiti artist. Like, there are people that are dressed really nice doing this stuff now. But anyway, so back to what I'm saying, you know, he was telling me one of his stories was he got hit with a $6,000 fine when he was just starting out. And like, to be honest with you, I couldn't handle a $6,000 fine just starting my life out, you know, as a 17, 18-year-old person. Like, that's a lot of money. And so where he's at in his life today, he can trace back to getting a fine that wrecked, you know, a lot of his life. And it's constantly trying to catch back up on top of, you know, living in the world that we do today where it's super expensive and everything is becoming harder to do to live in this world. I mean, like, look at the rent prices in Worcester. Like, I'm not from here, but even the 3 years that I've been here, I've been noticing the rent prices, you know, starting to shoot up. I could not imagine, you know, what it would be like for somebody to have that kind of hit. So when you're talking about murals and you're talking about community work, one of the things that I would really encourage you guys to look at, one, instead of, I don't know the artists who are coming in to do the murals. We haven't talked about that. I don't know them. And I'm sure they're really talented at what they do. But one of the things that I fell in love with Worcester was this is a city filled with really talented people. There are amazing artists, and there are people that this is their craft. You know, the store that I do art shows with, Artifact Supply, you know, Ryan, he's a great artist. He, you know, this is his business. He gets paid to travel around the United States and do murals. So when you're looking at murals, and the reason why I was talking about hostile architecture, don't look at murals as a way to curb graffiti, because all you're doing is you're saying, this is a wall that you could have, but you can't. And that's only like challenging them to say, I bet, like I will meet this challenge. And so one of the things I would really suggest is, like, in those images that you guys put out, very beautiful images, I think they're great, but genuine equity in the moment would, in my mind, look more like open space and welcoming space. So how are you, like, so there's this thing called public use walls. And so the way to look at this would be, it's just a wall that's up. And you're letting the community know, like, this is a wall that kids, you can come here and practice on. Artists, come and show your work. This wall is built for this. And most of the artists, 99% of them understand the ephemeralness of what they're doing. Where I can go to a wall, I can paint my Panda logo onto the wall, and 2 days later, it's gone. It's covered by somebody who did a better job than me. And I, you know, respect. Like I'm like, that's really cool. And I'll sit there and look, how can I fix my work? How can I get to this level? That's part of the conversation that's happening between artists, even if they don't even call it that. You see that when you talk to these guys. And they're saying, man, I gotta be honest, I didn't even think about doing this. And like, they're using all this language in, a lot of times, not in the most educated of ways. They're not using fancy language, but they're using the language that says, I'm evolving as a creator, and I can learn by seeing, and I'm gonna try this new thing out because I saw another person do this. And like, it's the same language I learned when I was in school and I was in art classes. Like, they may not have the same vocabulary as me, but they're using it. So I guess for me, I really appreciate how a lot of you guys are coming to this where you're like, we want to help, we want to listen, we want to understand. I think that's very, term would be progressive. I think it's very cool of you guys. Like, that's how the conversation should be. But I just want to make sure to challenge the answers that you guys are coming to. Your fear of not wanting to move forward because would it be for naught? I think at the end of the day, one of the things too is like, graffiti never goes away. Graffiti has been here since the dawn of time. We talked a little bit about, it was a funny story, in either in Ercolano or Pompeii, I can't remember which one. In the wreckage though, they found this on an old shop. They found like this graffiti where somebody was calling the shop owner a dog, basically. and graffiti is human history. And so when you come to it with respect and you respect the people who do it and you understand that this is a part of our human story, you want to welcome in more voices and not just utilize murals as a means of saying, this is the one and only voice that we want here. Now, murals are great, and I think we should continue to support having murals in places because you want to, again, call people up to making cooler or different art, but not all art has to be seen as pretty or appropriate. It doesn't have to be paint by number, and not all art is going to be agreed upon by everyone, because I can walk into the Modern Museum of Art and I can find things that even I have a very open mind when it comes to what constitutes as art, but I know for a fact there's certain artists that they're touted as an artist and I'm like, that's disgusting. So that is part of the conversation that we all have. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you did a great job of putting it all together.
Yeah.
So I think I'd like to move to the next stage of this, which is actually starting to discuss ideas.
Okay.
That we, one second.
Can I add one last?
Sure.
Because I think it's really important to also recognize this perspective, which is not all graffiti is about art. Not all graffiti is about expressing yourself. Some kids are angry because they're angry. Some kids are just assholes. Some kids like writing their name on stuff. Some are bored. Some just want to be in trouble. And some, you are never ever going to quell all the graffiti, no matter what you offer them. So it's really important to recognize that this is not, every graffiti art, every tagger out there is not a budding little graffiti artist. Every one of them is not going to be interested in being part of this. And if you're entering into this with the idea that this is going to be a panacea, be all, end all, like, blow that off your mind right now, because some kids are just not interested, and no matter what you do. So one of the important things to do is protect. And I think one of the things that we need to talk about when we're talking about what we do moving forward is how do you protect the things that are important to protect. There are some amazing products out there that are fairly recent that allow you to lay a coating over a mural or any other piece of artwork so that any graffiti that's laid down over it can be much more easily removed without damaging the artwork underneath it. It may also be a way to make an erasable public wall. To just put up a wall coated with this coating, let it be out there for however long so that kids can tag it, and every month maybe or whatever, come in and wipe it clean. But I just wanted to make sure, like, this is not, I don't want people to come in here feeling like, oh my gosh, all these poor kids, these poor little, some of them are just assholes and you're not going to reach them. So just like, that's got to be in your mind.
So
So then I guess we're opening it up to the audience right now.
Yes.
Does anybody have ideas, thoughts, in regards to things we could do? Solutions?
Come on, Ben.
I can
Ben
say right
had a
now,
really good idea today.
suggestion on the wall that she mentioned, how you have a paint coating on it.
The paint coat.
Specifically, that was used on the Bowery Wall in New York City.
On the what
On
wall?
the Bowery Wall.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, I asked you about it. But that wall specifically was a legal wall in New York City for about 20 decades. And it was bought by a developer, I think it was thwarted or something like that. And they put that coating on there. But they brought a muralist that was from World Canal, and they probably threw $100,000, and they did a beautiful mural.
Wow.
It's painted over every day, every night. They don't even bother to do it over again. So
No.
I say good luck if you want to do that. That's fine. That's a good way of approaching a mural like that. But that's an example. If you're using examples of graffiti in cities, that's an example of graffiti in city where you have a mural where you legitimately took something away from someone through gentrification, and that's the result of that.
Yeah.
So clarify on the language that was just used, legal wall. I said public use.
Open use wall, legal
Public
wall.
use legal wall. It's all basically the same concept where so for example, the only legal wall in Worcester, to my knowledge right now, is Artifact Supply.
Curated wall, yeah.
And it's technically, there's more curation there, but he does have areas in the back that is more open to people hitting them up. And so, yeah, like I was talking about earlier, that's just welcoming people to come in, put their own art up on there, and get practice.
How does the word get out that there is a legal wall?
No, great question. So, things I've seen, you see them on posts on social media, you see people just making announcements. A lot of times they become big announcements. You'll see people, especially if it's city or a city recognized thing, you bet the politicians are going to want to go out there for a ribbon cutting type ceremony, and then from there, just people start talking about it. And then you just kind of know, because I know in Boston they've got an alley.
It's called Graffiti Alley.
Graffiti Alley.
It's in Cambridge.
Graffiti alley.
Yeah.
It's the Central Square.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's over in Cambridge, and that is an area in Boston that artists know that they can go put up something, and I've seen some beautiful pieces that are up for 2 days.
That's work in collaboration with the city officials?
No,
How does it work?
initially it was. Initially it was set up as that, but it's an open wall. You can just go there and paint.
Who owns the wall?
Wall's a wall. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, wall's a wall. You said that, right?
No, who
Who
owns
owns
the
the
wall?
wall?
It's the company, the business in between. They
Yeah.
have no problem. The guys come out and get food sometimes.
Yeah, and basically the city says, we're cool with this.
People that are hanging out there
Yeah.
watching people paint.
Exactly. And that's why I mentioned earlier, even if there's and again, this is my lack of understanding for the Indian Lake area, community area. I live in West Tatnack, but even if there's a business out here, that has solid walls, and they're like, hey, we'd love for this to be legal public use walls, that could be something,
So,
not to offer suggestions, right? Because I know we're organizing stuff.
yeah, so specifically with Indian Lake, the barrier wall that's there, that's owned by the state, and the state won't allow any painting onto the wall itself.
Is it okay if I ask a question
Sure.
towards that? So actually, I was wondering that. Is that because, are there structural issues with that? Or is it just because of an urban development wanting to keep it a certain color? Not sure? Okay. No, and that's totally fine. I'm always interested in finding that stuff out, because I know there are certain types of brick that if you were to paint on them, depending on the age of the brick and how the brick was developed, the paint will actually encourage destruction of the brick, because as the brick gets colder and needs to breathe, it'll try to expand and then it'll just bust. And so it'll actually destroy buildings. So certain things we should try to avoid painting on them, because they're just not architecturally sound. It's not a good idea for what they're using. So I didn't know if you knew that.
I can ask them.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have other?
I just had a question.
Oh, you have a question?
Are you taking questions now, or?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say questions, ideas.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
the gentleman from the state, based on what you've heard so far, there's negative destructive graffiti, there's positive constructive graffiti, if you want to use adjectives. For what you've heard so far, can you see that there's the possibility of positive constructive graffiti?
I'm not sure on that, but, you know, it's hard to differentiate. You know, we get a call, we serve the whole public, so you could see it as positive, somebody else could see it as negative, and we're stuck in the middle.
Oh, what I meant is if the space was created specifically for that, so you didn't have to go clean it up. But there were certain rules so that you couldn't put, you know, swear words up there or defame people or whatever. Could you see that that might be a possibility that the state might be comfortable with at some point?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. We obviously,
So, I believe it's a safety issue, to be honest.
Yeah,
It's
or if it was done,
it's-
if there was safety involved too, that it was done in a safe and secure way.
right, most of our stuff are near high-speed roadways.
Right.
They're up tall.
So you'd have to limit where you do it. You couldn't do it along the Mass Pike, for example.
And, you know, obviously, we paint our bridges green.
Right.
We got a few red ones down on 146, and then purple ones by Holy Cross, but that's our color.
Right. Exactly.
That's our beauty.
Yeah. Could you have one bridge that's graffiti? No, could you have one bridge that's graffiti?
I'll hand it off to you real quick. I just want to clarify real quick. So you were saying was, if your group gets a call, if one person views it as positive and another person views it as negative, the tendency for Worcester or for DOT, sorry, is to lean towards the negative. So if 50 people really like it and one person hates it, it goes on to the list of things that need to be cleaned up.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So much for democracy. Does anybody know of any cities about the size of Worcester that has had some success?
Yeah, Fall River has had some, they have a legal wall.
Yep.
They're not the same size, so Fall River and Beverly have open space walls.
Yeah.
Beverly's open space wall has been there for about, since 95, 94, 93.
I was also going to say Miami has a good bit of open.
I'm also
Yeah,
very
I think of North New England only. Do you know who to reach? Would you know?
Beverly?
Yeah, would you know who to reach in either one of those towns so we could go visit them?
There's an address for the Beverly wall. Lowell has made a wall for painting specifically.
Yeah.
It's an underpass. So ironically, I don't know if you work for the state exactly or it's just a Worcester. Right, so the wall that Lowell uses is an underpass under 190, whatever goes through Lowell, if you know the area. It's legitimately an old train track that was converted into a rail trail, which is a popular thing that a lot of cities are doing now to connect cities for community reasons and whatnot, which are great. The rail trails are great. The one it was awesome. But they're using a wall that's a state-owned structure. And to complement, you said that sometimes the concrete is porous, so there is issues with that. I don't necessarily know what the percentage is on, like, you know, what is available to be painted with this and how it will deteriorate it.
To talk about our wall, the one we're talking about. They
No,
can
talk
define
about walls
car-
in general. Talk
I understand, but the wall we had put in, it's a fiber, there was a big car accident, so I got a chance to.
Yeah, I saw
clean it
that. I
up.
was there.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Carl, but the manufacturer of that wall, and it's kind of a composite, I think they're the ones who said, don't do anything to this wall.
Yeah, that's public. It's not really a wall people would like to paint on.
Right.
And often, and it's also a very dangerous spot. No one wants to be painting there and have a car come.
They paint on the inside.
Either way, no one wants to be painting there and have.
They've been painting it for a year.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
no one I know would want to paint that and have that safety issue, regardless of how great of a spot and how, you know, lucrative it might be for the artist. No one would want to do that because of safety issue.
So can
Or
we-
unless it's secured, that's on the other side going to be blocked off somehow, which
Basically what you're saying.
adds additional charges and stuff like
So
that.
real quick, just one point out, we got 5 minutes till the 10 that you were talking
You
about.
just want to repeat the towns, make sure we got them all. You said,
So Fall River, Beverly, and Lowell all have active walls that are used, but so the Beverly wall specifically was on a train track. What they did to avoid people from crossing it was put a fence about I don't know, 15 feet against the wall. So now you can still paint there, but it's a safety issue. They saw a problem, they corrected the issue without taking away from.
Did you also say Cambridge?
Yeah, Cambridge
Central
is,
Square, yeah.
yeah,
And does the,
Is it
did the
Graffiti
municipality?
Alley, was that the name of it?
Correct.
Graffiti Alley, yeah.
Graffiti alley.
In Cambridge?
Yeah, so a lot of cities have a graffiti alley. If you were to go to any platform and hashtag it, you would see people in front of graffiti alley.
And
So does the municipality curate that, set the rules for it, or are there
No.
private nonprofits that do that?
No, it's all basically run, from what I understand, from people that are of like-minded that want to paint there. So
Okay.
therefore they reciprocate with each other.
So they set their own rules and make sure they sort of police.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And typically it's done to a decent manner.
yeah, and it's kind of, I'm sorry, yeah.
Interject just something.
Sure.
So they have actually, in these cities that you just named, found that there's less graffiti around the rest of the city because there's a central focus place for people to do their graffiti.
So that's an interesting question. You'll see in larger cities, you're not gonna avoid that. Good luck, but they help. Graph Alley for Cambridge is basically where people can come and just do something. I can't speak for what happens outside the city for stuff that you deal with. I don't know about that, but again, someone had mentioned, like he mentioned, you can't stop everyone from doing everything, but if you're going to accommodate some people, at least try, because there's people out there that will come to there and will produce stuff that you want.
And a lot of this is what's connected to, you might hear terms of like harm reduction when you're looking at a lot of other things. This is kind of in that same vein where you are giving people focal points. It's the same thing I was talking about with the skateboarding. You know, yes, kids are still going to skateboard wherever they want, but you're going to see a lot more of them at the skate parks because that's where they can go and really work on and hone their craft. And yeah, so I like, again, I think personally, and I'm going to hop a little bit into like fixes, but I think personally, every neighborhood within Worcester should have a public use legal wall so that, again, with the understanding that you're not going to stop it all, because some kids are going to be assholes. You're not going to stop it all, but you're going to curb a lot of it. And the name of the game is harm reduction, not authoritarianism. We don't want to hurt people. We don't want to hurt kids. We want to offer places for them.
So if you don't know this, Worcester, the businesses owned in Worcester are 40% owned by people who were not born in America. Pretty proud of that statistic. It sounds like we need to find the business. I own a business. It wouldn't be appropriate, although I have a big wall where my business is, to find business owners to get here and see if we can get them a little publicity, because I think they like that, and find out who is willing to give up a wall in a neighborhood that's owned by a business to have the city help. It might take this man who's still there. Thank you for getting rid of the stuff. It sounds like that's, as an ILTA board member, a non-voting board member that I am, it sounds like that's a good route to go. Visit the other cities that you've mentioned that we can get to and make an appointment to meet with whoever and get some more ideas. But my question is, because I know we're going to wrap it up, do we still want to have security cameras? Because that's, we've talked about that as a board, to make sure we can see who's doing this, not to punish them and arrest them, but if we can find them. And then, and not have the police visit, but visit their parent or parents or guardians and say, you know, we'd like to get together for a nice meeting. And then if we have the graffiti wall already in our neighborhood, say, you know, you can go over there and do this. In fact, I don't know if you're volunteering, I'm just kidding here, but if we could have some, are you a graffiti artist? I don't even know if you are. Let me ask your wife, is he a graffiti artist?
He's an apprentice.
Okay. What about you? Are you?
An apprentice
All right,
graffiti
fair enough.
artist.
But
Well, so
I'm just putting you on the spot
Well,
here.
no. My tags are typically going to be what's called slaps, so I make a lot of stickers. And I will find faded stickers in areas and I will put my own stuff onto them. But I do not do larger scale works. I've assisted on murals with people, but that is the extent of that area.
The other thing is, and I think, who said it? You said it a couple times, one second. that, you know, what you bothered you was that we stalled on this project. I think that came from you.
What?
We had moved, oh, you said it, I'm sorry, you said it. We're working along, oh, we got graffiti kids in the neighborhood, we gotta stop working. That bothered you. We'll have another board meeting coming up, and board meetings are open to anybody. If anybody wants to know more about what we're doing, please, at my house, easy, lots of parking. For us to keep moving, we need to figure out how to get moving again. And then work with all those things we've heard and just keep going along. That's what it sounds like. And we'll talk about that as a board.
So we got 10 minutes.
I want to speak,
Oh,
and, because I don't think, you want to take the mic, Ben? Okay.
Did Ben have a good idea?
Yeah, Ben had a really good
Would you
idea.
just tell us what Ben's good idea is?
So Ben's good idea was have a graffiti contest. Have an area further down from the garden. We get a bunch of 4x8 plywood and have, you know, a contest. Come and show your work. And then we can paint over it and they can do it again. And somebody can be the judge of that. So I thought I will. Steve?
Yeah, there could also be scholarships for students who want to go to, for instance, RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design.
Sure. That would be great.
We
My
think big. We
idea-
think very big as this organization.
Well, no, but my idea as I was sitting here, I'm thinking about, you know, what's all the graffiti I see? I see a ton on trains. I see a lot. I think we should get a dumpster down from the garden so it doesn't take away, but it becomes our graffiti dumpster.
Why not?
And why not? You know, it's a good
The box
space.
car?
We can block it and people can just go graffiti wild on it. And it will become like an icon in the neighborhood.
So honestly, what you just threw out over there was the boxcar idea, which when you talk about, you see a lot of graffiti on trains.
Trains, boxcars.
Specifically, Worcester is known for its work on trains. Like, there are documentaries that highlight this city for the graffiti and the art done on trains here. You know, like,
The city council will love that.
and so like,
No, I'm dead serious.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you want to create like an icon, something that that could really make your neighborhood stand out. Throw a boxcar out there, let everyone hit it up, and it's just a constantly moved thing. Yeah.
You could also use,
Yeah, the time.
Let's do next steps.
oh, let me just add one thing. You could also use the boxcar for hydroponics inside.
I mean, you definitely got me on high.
Well, there is one near Clark University.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Can you guys put like something up for that, just to solve the problem with the turquoise?
Oh, yes.
Can we put something up so people know what's going on? That would be good.
Yes.
That's exactly what I was thinking, that would be,
I
that would
think
be
the
my
mistake
first.
I made,
And we'll let Joanne go and do her own tagging.
which
That's right.
Yeah, you can have your own spray can.
I think you pointed out the mistake that we made. I put a plaque on it that's about this big. And I really didn't want, you know, be like, oh, he just bought a table for the whole thing. I just kind of wanted it to appear there, green, and people would sit and notice that it's handicap accessible and people would be able to gather around it. But what you said is make it an object of art. And artists will respect it. Not every artist, and then there's the 8-year-old kids, but it's going to stand a better chance. Now, the thing about the big mural that we want to put out, in my fear is that, you know, a great thing gets done and then gets wrecked and all these people get disheartened. What do we do if that happens? Or do we just forge ahead?
Did the shed get defaced?
No.
Oh, bingo.
And- Right.
And that was going to be my next question. Thank you.
A lot of kids, like I said, Bunk Kid, I might use that for nothing, but a lot of kids, young kids, are gonna respect already made art like that.
Most of the murals that have been done through powwow and all of them have not been defaced.
Let's move to the next.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we have the last 5 minutes or so, ideas for solutions. I think we've already been tossing out a couple of really good solutions. I'm going to echo again, I like the boxcar concept. I really think having something public for everyone to hit is great. I'm going to make sure to turn back around any murals that you guys do in the community. Actively look for artists who are already working within that field, within that, like if that is their medium of choice, find them. Because then you got the people here, and I know you do, or somebody that's nearby. Don't don't fall victim to bringing in people from other states. I know. I'm just going to reiterate that because it's super important to, you know, make sure that, you know, this is a means of supporting someone in their art.
But I want to talk about what we can do from this group to move this conversation.
Oh, well,
For that.
yeah, I'm not exactly 100% sure how you guys work with your system, like how meetings and stuff go. I mean, for me, like I said earlier, I've got a lot of events that I do in the city, so I'm pretty busy. But if you give me enough time, like I'm more than happy to come out and continue to talk and bring more.
Last Sunday of every month.
Cool. So like
8 o'clock.
yeah, so I'm more than happy to come out and continue the conversation, introduce you guys to other artists who might be someone to look at as potentially bringing in to do stuff. I think that's important. And like I said, I've got a lot of connections in
We're looking
that.
for another board member.
You mentioned that, I think your wife mentioned that you're an apprentice. What about an apprentice program?
An apprentice program for people to learn how to do graffiti. and stuff.
Graffiti, yeah.
I mean, normally it's people like, you've got the really talented people doing like, you know, the line work, and you've got people like me who come in and do what's called fill work.
Yeah.
And so that's where I learn a lot of my stuff, and that's what I've seen. A lot of this is just learning by doing. Like you don't want to like organize it too much. You still want it to feel a little like free, you know,
Dangerous.
and little dangerous, little
Right.
wild.
Little
Like you
risky.
still want a little bit of that in there. However, you know, when you do settle on finding an artist for like, say you've got a mural space and you want to do a mural, how are you bringing in the kids in the community? How are you getting the word out to say, hey kids, do you want to learn how to make murals? Come watch our artist at this time, and this time, and make sure you have people that are there who are answering questions. Because like when they're working, and like a lot of these artists that I've met, they love talking to people, but they're also in the middle of their craft. And these guys, like a lot of these people, they're not always the best at being able to talk and work at the same time because they want to hyper focus, and you want to give them that space. So like having people there that can answer questions, so you have your main people working, and then maybe you bring in another graffiti artist or another muralist who's specifically there just to answer questions and be like, now you see what they're doing there? Do you see why they just switched out the caps? I'm going to talk about why, like the different strokes you get from the different caps you have on your paint can, your spray cans.
I think we need to give everybody else get one more shot, because we're going to end up in a second.
Absolutely.
I know you had your hand up for a while, yeah.
If we're talking about a next tangible step, one of the first things I learned in community organizing is report back. Somebody from this group who is enthusiastic about this idea should present all of this at your next board meeting to get the rest of your board on board.
Right.
Because they will be your best publicizers. And it's one thing to like hear about it or have contact you and say, hey, we're gonna have this conversation. It's another thing for you guys to get up in front of the board and say, so we had this meeting and we had these awesome ideas, and here's what we came up with, and we would really like to move this forward.
The good news is almost the entire board is here. Right, that's okay, there's one person missing, I think just one. Two.
Two.
The young girl out
Yeah.
in Springfield.
Good.
And I would
Yeah.
definitely make my next step telling the story of Turquoise Chamber.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
why.
And your
Why
story,
it's
Deb,
there.
is important. And your story is important, and yours, and I think we need to include the state and the city somehow, and hear from them what a pain in the ass it is to have to go out every day and then encourage people to find a solution. But I know you're brand new in the job, and probably got stuck here tonight without any preparation. I've been
Well,
there
hopefully it
before.
was interesting to you.
Yeah, but to find out who the decision makers are at the state and city level, and
We know
get them to be. It's not easy, but try.
Chris, did you have anything to say?
Last comments.
Yeah, how will you exhibit respect towards the artist? Because we've talked a lot about the art, but we haven't talked about people creating it. So how do you respect them? Regardless of if you think what they're doing is good or bad. Showing respect goes a long way.
Okay.
So that's,
Yeah.
That's probably the last question because it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah, we're at 8, so. Thank you guys for having me, and thank you all the other panelists for being here and sharing your stories. It's really important.